G'day boys and girls, it's your boy TSDS, and today we're going to talk about fucking cheese. And by cheese I mean dosh, and by dosh I mean wonga, and of course by wonga I mean moolah, and by moolah I mean smackers? Anyway, money, coinage, gil. Alright, I'll stop now, but Gil was the one. Now, normally I don't talk about this type of stuff because we all have our own ways of making money, and if I tell everyone my secrets, then they're not exactly secrets anymore. But then I thought, meh, so here we are. For clarity, I'm not some giga-brained, gill-capped on 8 characters Richie Rich type, but I'm also not a rope belt mo, so allow me to run through some tips and tricks for maximising your wallet. Now, without further ado, tip number 1. Fuck. When you're selling stuff on the market board and some pretender comes and undercuts you, undercut them right back, but like undercut by 1 gil. I constantly see people undercut by hundreds or thousands of gil at a time, and it boggles my mind. It doesn't matter if it's going for 10k or 15k, if they want it, they'll buy it. But if you undercut by anything more than a single gil, I mean, do you not want money? Like, what the things don't always sell that quickly, but these undercutters can destroy a market between sales. Undercut by 1 gil and keep prices high. Tip number 2. Undercut by 1 gil. Seriously, y'all stop ruining my shit. Tip number 3. If you have a crafter around level 50 or more, check what sort of things you can craft and price check them on the market board. Anything that looks cool for glamour, like certain eye patches or things like furniture items. You may discover something sells for a pretty solid amount, and the materials to make them will usually be very cheap. An important thing here is to check the sale history. If something is selling for 100k, but the sale history spans months and prices are about like 10k, you know it's not going to stick. But if you see some high prices there, then it can be worth a shot. Eventually, this can lead you onto some staple products, and while glamour and furniture are not usually fast sales, it can add up over time, especially if you have a lot of irons in the fire. Tip number 4. If the listings for an item are currently empty or there's only 1 or 2 sellers, don't put all of your inventory for sale from a single retainer. Instead, if you've got like 4 chairs to sell, put 2 on each retainer and undercut yourself on one of them by 1 gil. The reason for this is psychology. If someone sees only 4 chairs for sale, all from the same person and at a potentially high price, if they're smart, they might wait for competition to undercut the price down. By adding multiple of your own retainers into the mix, you can give the impression of multiple sellers where the price is not being hacked down. Meaning, if the player wants a chair, this is the price they're probably going to have to pay. Hey, I'm a bastard. Tip number 5. Now, if you're wanting to buy something and the thing you're after is expensive, check if it's craftable, and if it is, check how much the materials would cost. If you're in an active free company, you could ask if there are any crafters who would be able to make it for you. In most cases, FC members are quite happy to make things for free, though it's still nice to ask how much they would like as a payment. You can also search for non-FC crafters, but there's more of a substantial obligation to tip someone here, which is fair. Either way, crafting an item is usually much cheaper than buying it straight from the board. Tip number 6. If you're buying an item like a piece of gear or even certain mounts, check the tooltip for shop selling price. If this says none, that means no NPC sells the item. However, if a value is present, that means that somewhere there's a vendor which sells the thing. At that point, you can just Google to find where, and the prices will almost always be substantially lower than what's on the market board. You can see this easily with things like Terebrinth, which sells from a vendor for 60 gold. Gil, whatever. But sells all day on the market board for double. That said, be careful if you're thinking to flip things like that for profit. Lots of people know about this, so the competition is fierce, and to be honest, it's usually just not worth it. Shout out to the dude who spent an extra 15 million gil buying the gilded Mikoshi flute. Whoops. Tip number 7. Now, let's say you want to buy something expensive, but you're totally out of options. Did you know you can travel to other servers and buy things on their market boards? Run up to an Aetherite and select Visit Another World server. Then under the world list, choose somewhere else and enjoy your trip. If you wait, you'll be automatically moved as a visitor to another server. Then just go to the market board and take a look at prices. Depending on what you're after, you can easily save millions of gil here or find things that might be worth flipping. Tip number 8. Now, flipping is the method of buying things and reselling at a higher amount. Buy for $1, sell for $2. This is pretty nice as the effort involved is tiny because you're literally just buying and reselling. Now, finding things to flip isn't that easy, and to be honest, flipping doesn't seem as profitable in Final Fantasy XIV as compared to other games I've played, like WoW, because it's harder to dominate a market. That's my cat sneezing in the background. With that said, look for fast-moving items. If the whole sale history lasts about a day or two and the prices aren't chicken scratch, favourite them and check prices each day. Over time, you'll learn how stable the item is. Obviously, this is a risk, but the more unstable the better. By this I mean the price is changing by large amounts very quickly. Obviously, what you're going to do is learn the lowest price that something dips to and buy a bunch during the dip. Wait for prices to rise and sell it off. Now, one caveat here is that fast-moving items have a ton of competition. When it comes time to sell, you'll need to check regularly for people undercutting, and you're not guaranteed to sell out before it dips again. Pets are investable for flipping too, but pets are really slow sellers. So I used to actually sell these, but they're so slow and any competition just destroys it, so I just don't bother anymore. As a final note for flipping, remember to take into account purchase fees and the 5% tax the market board takes from sales. Buying a pure white dye for 275k and selling it for 340 sounds decent, but after purchase fees and taxes, the net profit is only 34k, and there are plenty of things you can just manually farm and sell for a faster turnover. Tip number 9. So let's say you're watching a bunch of items and you notice the price on something bombs. For example, Fenrir pups could reach up to 2 mil on my server, then all of a sudden they started dropping to like 600k and now they're almost worthless. I've flipped these in the past, but huge dips like this are a red flag that something might be going on. In these situations, before you invest in what looks like an amazing dip, do a little research to see if you can find out what might be causing it. In the case of Fenrir pups, a recent patch introduced material containers obtainable with Grand Company seals. These boxes contain random pets, which can be the pup, so the price drop was down to the massive change in rarity. If I'd have just bought blindly into this dip, I would have lost a lot of money. If you're super try-hardy, you can work this in reverse and read patch notes looking for anything that has a reason to increase in value. For example, back in the day, polarized glass used to cost a few thousand each. Then a patch landed and it went straight to 100k. I was buying these to make glasses at the time and I had no idea this change was coming, so I missed out big time. But, Also, dyes are great to sell at the beginning of an expansion because everyone needs their new glam sorted, and are usually cheaper at the end of an expansion because fewer people need them. I made over 2 million gil flipping 16 pots of jet black dye at the start of Endwalker and could have made much more had I dared to invest more money. With that said, don't feel bad about losing out on what you could have made. It's always a risk, so hedging your bets is always the right decision. Tip number 10. If you're doing a lot of dungeons and have Grand Company seals coming out the wazoo, head over to your Grand Company quartermaster and take a note of all the different materials they sell. Remember, only look at the ones that are not marked as untradeable. Then head over to the market board and start price checking shit. These items are usually pretty unstable, but if you don't need Grand Company seals, you can turn them into some money if you can find out what's the highest price to company seal ratio. Tip number 11. Now then, the item level 270 Heavensward Poetic gear will easily see you through the Stormblood MSQ. The item level 400 Stormblood Poetic gear will easily see you through basically all of Shadowbringers. And the item level 530 Shadowbringer gear can easily see you clear most of Endwalker. If you don't really need these upgrades, just use the coffers and sell the gear. For a bonus tip, if you have multiple classes, check the slot and item level of the coffer, then look up that item on the market board for each of your classes to see which version sells for the most. Then swap to that class and use the coffer and sell it. I started doing this with all the Endwalker coffers and must have made at least 1 million gil. It's not a lot, but considering I easily cleared all of the content using my 530 Shadowbringer gear, it's free money. Tip number 12. Now then, for my final gill making tip, and I've saved really the best for last. This is guaranteed to make a lot of money, and it's so smart and clever that I want to save it just for the smartest and cleverest of you. So, if you want to know this fantabulous gill making secret recommended by at least 8 out of 10 dentists, come and find me in-game, and for a small investment fee of 10,000 gil, I'll personally whisper you my top secret and highly valuable money-earning trick. Gil is non-refundable. TSDS and/or associated worries of light are not liable for missed rent payments or evictions. Satisfaction not guaranteed, batteries not included. And those are my, I guess, tips on how to not be poor. As I said, I'm just a humble, good-looking man who just wishes everyone would stop undercutting my damn shaded spectacles by thousands of gil at a time. How am I going to turn a profit if you can drive my shit into the ground, you bunch of fucking potato bastards? Anyway, these are my straight-up basic ways of fat stacking Benjis. If you have your own tips for making money and want to share them, send me a DM. Or I guess you could leave them here in the comments. Hopefully you found some things interesting, and if not, no refunds.